My heart was a cage, and the bars were made of his lies. Every day I woke up, and the world felt a little smaller, a little darker. I knew something was wrong, a silent alarm screaming in the back of my mind, but he had a way of twisting my reality until I was the one who felt crazy. This isn't a story about a bad breakup. This is a story about a monster. He didn't use a knife or a gun. He used my own mind against me. He was a psychopath, and I was his prisoner. But I'm here now, alive and free, because I found an ancient key that unlocked the cage. The philosophy of the Stoics. This is how I fought for my sanity and won. This feels like the confession you never wanted to make. The shame is a heavy blanket, suffocating you under the weight of one question. How could I have been so blind? You run the scenes back in your head, searching for the moment you should have seen it. The charm that felt like fate, the intensity that felt like passion, the sudden isolation that felt like love. But all you find is a ghost in the machine, a person so skilled at hiding their true self that you begin to doubt your own sanity. He convinced me that I was the problem, that I was imagining things, that I was hysterical. And the more I tried to understand his motives, the more deeply I was pulled into his web. But there is a way out, and it starts with a single brutal truth. A sane mind can never truly understand an insane one. The monster wasn't in the closet. He was sleeping next to me. The most terrifying thing about a predator like this is that they don't hunt in the open. They study you. They spend weeks, months, meticulously mapping out your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your deepest fears, and your greatest desires. They collect this information like a hunter gathering intel on their prey. They learn how you tick, not to love you, but to learn how to break you. He used my own intelligence against me, making me feel like I was going crazy. I would question him about a lie, and he would turn it back on me, his voice calm and patronizing. "You're so dramatic. Why do you always imagine these things?" It's a psychological assault known as gaslighting, and it's a form of torture. He made me doubt my own memory, my own sanity, my own reality. But the most insidious part was the way he isolated me. He slowly, systematically cut me off from my friends and family, convincing me that they didn't understand us, that they were a threat to our special bond. I was alone, vulnerable, and completely trapped in a world he had built just for me, a world where his word was the only truth. We've talked about the monster and the cage. Now, let's talk about the key. The journey out of that darkness wasn't a sudden escape. It was a desperate, agonizing climb. I had to find a new way to see the world, to think and to survive. I had to learn to fight back not with my fists, but with my mind. The answers I found weren't in a self-help book, but in the writings of men who lived thousands of years ago. Men who understood what it meant to face chaos with an unbreakable spirit. What follows are the 5 Stoic principles that didn't just save me, they rebuilt me from the ground up. The dichotomy of control, reclaiming my mind. The first rule of survival is to stop fighting a battle you can't win. I was an exhausted soldier on a psychological battlefield, and my enemy was an invisible force, his mind. Every day was a desperate war to understand why. Why did he lie so easily? Why did he twist my words until they were unrecognizable? Why did he get a sick pleasure from watching me suffer? I spent all my energy, all my sanity, trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle of his sickness. I was trying to change his thoughts, control his actions, and force him to be the person I wanted him to be. I was trying to do the impossible, and the effort was tearing me apart, leaving me vulnerable, open, and terrified. Then, in the darkest hour, when I thought I had nothing left, I stumbled upon a lifeline. Not a person, not a promise, but a single, brutal, and liberating truth. The dichotomy of control. It's a simple idea that cuts through the chaos like a blade. The Stoics taught that there are things in this world that are up to you and things that are not. The things that are up to you are your thoughts, your judgments, your reactions, and your character. Everything else, other people's actions, their opinions, their illnesses, even the things they say, is not up to you. This wasn't a comforting thought. It was a devastating one. It meant that every ounce of energy I had poured into him was wasted. I couldn't stop his next lie. I couldn't undo his last manipulation. And I certainly couldn't force him to be a decent human being. My frantic struggle to control him was the very thing that was keeping me a prisoner. I had to make a choice that was more terrifying than anything else I had faced. I had to let go. I had to stop chasing answers to questions that had no answers. It was better to be left with the burning doubt of why than to be consumed by the trauma of his explanations. So I started small. He would call and I wouldn't answer. He would text me a lie and I would consciously choose not to give it my attention. Every time he tried to pull me back into the fight, I would turn my focus inward. I stopped replaying his words in my head and started listening to my own gut. I stopped trying to understand his actions and began to focus on my own. The first step was a terrifying act of faith. I had to believe that my perception, my own judgment, was more real than his. When he told me I was crazy for remembering a lie, I had to stop arguing and simply assent to the truth I knew in my heart. When he told me my friends were turning against me, I had to choose to trust my own judgment about them. This was the turning point. By reclaiming my own thoughts, I was taking back the only territory I ever truly owned. As I began to shift my focus, something incredible happened. His power began to evaporate. He was a master of chaos, and by refusing to participate in his chaos, I was starving him of his energy. His lies fell flat because I refused to catch them. His attempts at manipulation failed because I was no longer trying to control him. He would try to start a fight, but I would simply walk away. His rage, once my greatest fear, now felt like a desperate, pathetic noise in an empty room. I am not telling you this was easy. It felt like I was tearing off my own skin. But with every choice I made to focus on my own actions, on my own sanity, on the things I could actually control, I was rebuilding myself. I was putting the pieces of my mind back together, one by one. The dichotomy of control wasn't just a philosophy, it was the ultimate act of self-preservation. It taught me that my freedom wasn't dependent on his actions. My freedom was already within me, waiting for me to reclaim it. It was the key to the cage, and I finally had the courage to use it. The power of perception, desperately seeking sanity. The dichotomy of control was a shield, but it was just the beginning. I had stopped fighting his war, but the battlefield was still inside my own head. When you've lived for so long in a world built on lies, your own mind becomes a funhouse mirror, and the reflection you see is a twisted, monstrous version of yourself. He had poisoned my perception, tainting every thought, every memory, every feeling with his venom. I would look at a photograph of a happy moment, and all I could see was a lie he had carefully constructed. I would hear a friend's casual compliment, and my brain would automatically translate it into a hidden insult, a coded message that meant they were secretly judging me. The simplest, most ordinary parts of life felt utterly alien. A normal conversation seemed aggressive. An honest act of kindness felt like a trap waiting to spring. My mind was so accustomed to searching for the hidden motive, the subtle manipulation, the impending betrayal that it couldn't recognize truth when it was standing right in front of me. I had lived in a state of hypervigilance for so long that I couldn't turn it off. I was a soldier who had survived the war but couldn't stop seeing enemies everywhere. The world wasn't a safe place anymore. It was a constant, low-level threat. The monster was gone, but his ghost still haunted every corner of my existence. This is where the Stoic discipline of perception became my weapon. It taught me to separate fact from fiction, not just in the world, but in my own head. It was a rigorous, painful exercise. Every time a thought would arise, born of his poison, that friend is lying to you. That person is secretly mocking you. You are still weak and stupid for what you went through. I had to hold it up to the light. I had to ask myself, is this a fact, or is it a judgment I'm making based on the trauma he inflicted? I had to interrogate my own mind, to become my own detective, searching for the truth. I would write things down. I would make lists. One column was for what I felt, the other column was for what was actually true. I felt terror when the phone rang, but the truth was, it was just my mother calling. I felt shame when I looked at my reflection, but the truth was, I was standing in my own home, a free person. This practice was like rebuilding my own operating system from the ground up, one line of code at a time. It was a terrifying process because the foundation of what I thought was real had been shattered. It was slow and frustrating. There were days when I felt like I was losing the battle, when his voice in my head was louder than my own. But every time I made the conscious choice to see a simple fact for what it was, to reject the lie, a tiny piece of the funhouse mirror cracked and fell away. I wasn't just desperately seeking sanity, I was painstakingly putting it back together. The virtue of courage, stepping away. The mind can be a powerful fortress, but it's worthless if your body is still a prisoner. I had started to reclaim my thoughts, to filter his venom from my perception, but I was still living under his roof, in his world. And every single day, the fear was a physical presence. It was a knot in my stomach, a cold dread that would seize my heart. Every time I heard his footsteps in the hallway, I felt trapped, surrounded by a subtle, invisible force field that seemed to paralyze me whenever I thought of leaving. I was afraid of his rage, afraid of what he would do, afraid of what he might say. But most of all, I was afraid of the unknown, the vast, terrifying emptiness of a life without him, a life I no longer knew how to live. The world wants to believe that courage is the absence of fear, that it's some heroic act where you feel nothing but strength. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that courage is the willingness to do the right thing in spite of the terror. It is not the absence of fear. It is the triumph over it. And leaving him was the most terrifying, most courageous act of my life. I had to plan in secret, like a spy, in my own home. I learned to make my face a mask of calm indifference, while my heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Every text I sent to a friend asking for help was a risk. Every item I carefully packed into a small bag felt like a crime. I had to become two people: the terrified woman who wanted to disappear and the determined survivor who was going to walk out that door. The night I left, the air felt thick and heavy, like something was about to break. He was asleep, and I moved like a ghost. Every creak of the floorboards, a gunshot in the silent house. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely turn the key in the lock. The fear was a living thing, whispering in my ear that he would wake up, that he would catch me, that I would never escape. But I had to shut that voice down. I had to tell myself that this one moment, this one terrifying, desperate action was within my control. I could not control his reaction, but I could control the motion of my legs, the turning of the key, the quiet click of the door. I had to choose my own freedom over my fear. And then I was in the car, on the road, with the keys in my hand and a life that was now entirely mine. But the fear didn't disappear. It transformed. It became the raw, dizzying terror of uncertainty. The road ahead was long and dark. I had no idea what was next. But for the first time in a very long time, that fear wasn't about him. It was about me. It was the fear of a new life, a real life, one that I would have to build myself. But even in that paralyzing fear, I found a flicker of the courage that got me out. The courage to keep driving, the courage to keep going, the courage to embrace the unknown and to finally, truly, be free. The discipline of assent, rebuilding trust. The escape was a physical act. The real battle was still to come. I was safe, but I was far from healed. His voice was a constant presence in my mind, a relentless echo of his lies and manipulations. Every time a friend asked me a question, I would tense up, bracing myself for the attack that never came. Every time a kindness was shown to me, I would instinctively search for the hidden cost. My mind, trained for so long to be a fortress against his psychological warfare, was now a prison of its own making. I couldn't trust my own judgments, couldn't trust my own feelings, couldn't trust myself. The deep, insidious doubt he had planted was still thriving. He was gone, but I was still doing his work for him. This is where the Stoic principle of the discipline of assent became my next tool. Assent, the Stoic said, is the act of giving your internal approval to a thought or perception. It's the final gatekeeper of your mind. My mind was still full of his toxic thoughts, the seeds of self-doubt he had planted. The discipline of assent taught me to be ruthless in examining them. I couldn't stop the thoughts from coming, but I could refuse to give them my assent. I had to become a vigilant guard at the gate of my own consciousness. The process was slow and methodical. I would hear a thought in my mind, "You are a failure for letting this happen," and I would stop it. I would hold it up, examine it, and ask, "Is this true? Is this a fact, or is this a poisonous judgment?" And I would choose not to assent to it. I would reject it, push it back, and in its place I would choose a new thought, a true thought. I survived. I am strong. I am a person worthy of respect and love. It was a battle waged over and over again, every single day. There were times when the old thoughts felt so real, so true, that it felt easier to just give in, to believe his lies about me one more time. But I knew that every time I assented to one of his lies, I was letting him back into my life. Every time I rejected one, I was taking a piece of myself back. I had to actively, consciously rebuild my own identity. I had to relearn what it felt like to be a person who wasn't constantly on the defensive. It meant being patient with myself, forgiving myself for the mistakes I made, and celebrating the tiny, quiet victories of a single day where I didn't let his ghost win. The discipline of assent wasn't about erasing the past. It was about giving myself permission to build a new future, a future where I, and only I, was the master of my own mind. The practice of Amor Fati, loving my fate. I am here now. I survived. I am free. But there was a final, insidious trap that I had to escape. The trap of regret. I would find myself wishing it had never happened, wishing I could go back in time and change things. If only I had seen the signs. If only I had walked away sooner. This regret was a slow-acting poison, a final attempt to keep me from moving forward. It was a longing for a different past, a past that didn't exist, a past that was not my own. But the Stoics have a final, breathtaking answer to this. It's a phrase that once felt like a cosmic joke, a brutal paradox. Amor Fati, love your fate. This is not a command to love the abuse. I will never love the lies, the fear, the manipulation. But Amor Fati is about loving what the experience created in me. It is about seeing the fire I walked through not as a source of eternal pain, but as the crucible that forged my true strength. I am not the same person I was before. I am more empathetic, more resilient, and more deeply aware of the nature of evil. I am a survivor, and my survival has a purpose. My story is not one of shame. It is a testament to the power of the human spirit. Every scar, every difficult memory, every moment of fear I endured became a tool, a lesson, a part of the person I am today. It made me a better judge of character. It gave me the wisdom to help others who may be in the same position. It gave me a voice I never knew I had. I had to learn to not just accept what happened, but to embrace it. To say, this too was a necessary part of my journey. This too was a part of the design of my life, and I am stronger and more whole because of it. So my fate was to face a monster, and my fate was to not just survive, but to rise. My life, like this pottery, is not perfect. It has been shaped by immense pressure and heat, and it bears the marks of that process. But those marks tell a story of resilience. This is my story. It is a story I am no longer afraid to tell. It is a story I am finally proud of. I don't just accept my fate, I love it. Because my fate brought me here, to you, and to this moment of profound peace. I am not defined by what happened to me. I am defined by the fact that I survived and became who I am today. The fear is gone. The shame is gone. For so long, I was afraid of the truth. I was afraid of what people would think if they knew I had been so deeply, so completely deceived. I was afraid they would see me as a fool, as weak, as an easy mark. I kept it all locked away in a dark corner of my soul, a shameful secret that kept me a prisoner, even after I had physically escaped. But the Stoics taught me that my worth is not defined by external events, by the lies someone told me, or by the opinions of others. My worth is defined by my character, by my actions, by my unbreakable spirit. And in that moment of quiet truth, something inside me shifted. I realized the monster couldn't touch me anymore. His power was an illusion, a ghost that I had given life to by my fear. The moment I chose to speak my truth, to tell my story, to refuse to let his shame become my own, that was the moment I truly won. The terror I once knew has been replaced not by a fragile peace, but by an unshakable inner strength. The fire that was meant to burn me down instead forged me into a weapon, and now I am using that weapon to tell this story. This isn't the end of a nightmare, this is the beginning of a life. Conclusion. This isn't just my story. It's a story of what happens when you face pure psychological warfare and choose to fight back not with rage, but with wisdom. I walked through hell, and the only things that came out with me were the Stoic principles I had to learn in order to survive. The dichotomy of control gave me a fortress for my mind. The power of perception taught me to see a world beyond his lies. The virtue of courage was the terrifying force that propelled me out the door. The discipline of Assent was the gatekeeper that rebuilt my sanity, and Amor Fati was the final defiant act of turning my greatest trauma into my greatest strength. My pain was unique, but the fight is universal. We all face monsters, whether they live in a person, a circumstance, or in the echoes of our own past. But you are not a victim, you are a warrior. You have the power to reclaim your own mind, to build a life of freedom, and to find triumph in the ashes of your most difficult battles. This is not the end of a nightmare. This is a testament to the power of the human spirit. I am no longer a prisoner of my past. I am a voice for the present. If you are struggling in the shadow of a monster, remember that your mind is the only territory you truly own. And it is a fortress no one can breach without your assent. If my story has resonated with you, if it has given you even a flicker of hope, I have a request. Share this video, not just for me, but for the countless others who are still searching for a way out. Subscribe to this channel to continue this journey of finding strength in ancient wisdom. Your escape is not just possible, it's waiting for you. Don't let your fear win. Your story starts now.
Thank you for watching this video here on the Stoic philosophy. If you found value in this, I invite you to explore more videos on the channel. There's so much more wisdom to uncover. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.